Caution. The enemy is approaching. Caution. The enemy is approaching.
That's much better.
Caution. The enemy is approaching. Caution. The enemy is approaching. Caution. The enemy is approaching. Caution. The enemy is approaching.
What are you doing? You need to get to a shelter, fast.
What's the rush? My daughter's getting married tomorrow. We were just coming back from the rehearsal. It was one hell of a shindig, wasn't it, honey?
Look at what's going on. You need to evacuate as soon as possible.
I know. Why don't you come with us for a celebratory drink? The more the merrier.
We're at war. The Garmonians are shooting anything that moves, civilians and soldiers alike.
What kind of crazy talk is that? Nova Slava is the most peaceful city on Earth. You know, my son-in-law was born in Garmonia. To be honest, I wasn't so sure about him at first. But then I thought, my daughter fell in love with him, so he must not be all that bad. And you know what? He wasn't. Now come on, that beer won't drink itself.
If you stay here, you're going to end up dead like the rest of your family.
Hey, I'm all for dark humor, but that's taking it way too far. What's wrong with you? Well, I guess I can forgive you just this once. My daughter's getting married after all. This calls for a drink. Or 5.
How long are you going to keep up this charade? Your daughter, your wife, they're all dead. Look over there. That is a body. A dead body. You can't ignore that. Do you understand? Now, I'm taking you somewhere safe. Come with me.
You think you know everything. So what? I should just leave them behind? Maybe they're just dead bodies to you, but they're my family. If I'm causing you trouble, then I might as well just disappear. What's the point in living in a hell like this anyway? I've had it up to here with you trying to butt your nose into my business.
Caution. The enemy is approaching. 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 Caution. The enemy is approaching.
I want a situation report now. Have you located Boonin?
Sir, a search of his office yielded a number of data files.
Only files? Not the man himself? He had orders to wait there.
There was no one in the office, sir.
That coward must have gotten spooked. Order our troops to conduct a thorough search of the area for him. And get those files analyzed immediately. Kill anyone who tries to interfere. Am I understood?
Yes, sir.
That wasn't Borodin's unit. That man looked like the commander, but he wasn't wearing a Garmonian uniform. Who on earth is he?
His uniform resembles a Zaftra army pilot suit. It is highly possible that Zaftra sent him to collaborate with the Garmonia army.
Wait. Are you saying Zaftra's involved in this war?
Lacking any further information, I cannot hazard a guess.
Koshka, any info about this Boonin person they're looking for?
I believe they are referring to Novoslava councilman Vladimir Boonin.
What's a councilman doing getting involved with the enemy military?
Lacking any further information, I cannot hazard a guess.
Don't worry about it. I'll figure it out for myself. They mentioned something about data files. Maybe finding those files will tell me what those guys are doing here.
Caution. The enemy is approaching. 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 Analyzing data. File name. 1st Special Battalion dinner assignments. Entered into archives.
Seriously?
Caution. The enemy is approaching. 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 Caution. The enemy is approaching.
Don't move!
That's much better.
Caution. The enemy is approaching. 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 Nearby survivor located. Transmitting coordinates to your device. Analyzing data. File name. Top 100 Garmonian beauties. Entered into archives.
What? Don't archive that.
Caution. The enemy is approaching. Caution. The enemy is approaching.
Data analysis complete.
Good. Now transmit these copies. Get the original drive and come with me. We'll report this directly to Lieutenant Zazchev.
Caution. The enemy is approaching. 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 Caution. The enemy is approaching.
Hey!
What is this, Koshka?
It appears to be Wanzer production reports. It seems that, for some reason, this one was designed and produced in secret.
So those guys who were looking for Boonin must really be after this mech.
It is highly possible. According to the data, it was already assembled and transported to warehouses near the harbor. Caution. The enemy troop deployments have changed. Transmitting information to your device.